How to get better at guitar as an adult. Why would I talk about this? Well, because I was an adult beginner.
Wait a minute. Who are you?
My own guitar journey started about 4 years ago. The video's up here if you want to check it out. Some of you seemed interested in how fast I progressed. I just wanted to talk more about it. I tried to pick up guitar the first time when I was 17. I picked up an acoustic steel string. It was brutal, my fingers, bar chords were so discouraging, and I found myself really not progressing at all.
You just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
Quit the instrument. A few years later, I picked it up again, and I picked up electric this time. I really wasn't expecting much starting guitar at 24. I got better than I ever expected. Played a bunch of gigs. It's just been really, really rewarding. I'm someone who, when starting at 24, was focused on getting as good as I could in as little time as I could. But I also wanted to have fun, and I didn't want to burn out. I wanted to play the songs that I really loved and just nurture a newfound love for guitar. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, then maybe keep watching. I wish someone had told me some of these things when I tried to pick up acoustic at 17 by myself. Probably wouldn't have quit. And probably would be a lot better now, actually. The age-old question, acoustic or electric or classical? For the overwhelming majority, I would say go electric. The only reason to me you should start learning on an acoustic would be that all the guitar songs you want to learn are on acoustic. Maybe you want to be a singer-songwriter who strums and plays. If you love classical music and that's all you want to play, maybe the classical guitar is for you. For almost everyone, I would say please try electric first. I strongly believe that if I picked up an electric instead of an acoustic, I probably never would have quit guitar and I would be way better now. There's a reason why so many people quit guitar so fast, and I would say it's mostly because of the finger pain. A lot of people really give up when they are presented with bar chords and just the steel string acoustic. I have no doubt that the steel string acoustic has probably made 100 times more players quit than the electric guitar. It's just so painful on your fingers, so much resistance, and for a beginner, it can be really discouraging. Definitely go for the electric first. It may seem like more moving parts, but the electric is definitely the way to start, I would say. Electric is so versatile. I had a poll on my channel where 99% of people said they would pick the electric guitar if they could only pick one guitar. It's so much more comfortable to play, so much more customizable. Especially as an adult, we love to just personalize whatever we can and really feel like we can identify with the things we have. And that's what I love about electric guitar. There's so many varieties and there's so many ways you can customize it. I think it's so fun to have something that's so uniquely you. You can slap stickers on it, you can scrape at it, you can repaint it. Just look at some of the iconic rock star guitars that are so unique and so personal. On an electric guitar, you can play classical, you can play folk, country, pop, and you can play funk, jazz, rock, metal, you name it, really. The biggest selling point for electric is being able to play late at night. When I first picked up acoustic, it was so loud I couldn't even practice late at night, which was the only time I would want to practice. So if you're like me, getting a big steel string acoustic would be pretty brutal. It would really hurt your practice. And electric, you can get away with playing while everyone's around asleep and no one's going to be bothered. There's so many ways to even play almost silently, like with the Waza Air headphones that I love, or just tiny amps here and there that are just so wonderful to play on. For electric guitar, you're bound to find something that speaks to you aesthetically, which is
nice.
More durable, more portable, just so fun.
Bye-bye, guitar. It bounced.
I cannot understate how much I would have loved to start on electric instead of acoustic. Picks. what picks to use? I would say to start with thin or medium gauge picks. I had an easier time with these when I was starting out. I had less control with my picking hand. I really felt a lot of resistance using heavier picks. As I got better, I would find myself moving up pick gauge. I would start using thicker picks. I would feel like I was outgrowing picks. I would be breaking picks. You'll probably also drop a lot of picks. That's totally fine. I think there's really no way around that besides trying certain picks with grip. I personally love the Dava picks, and when I tried those, I almost never dropped them. Some people also love the Herco picks that have grip as well. Now I'm using the Jazz 3 picks. I was using the regular red Jazz 3 picks and also these Altex XL Jazz 3s. These are really fantastic for lead, some rhythm stuff, but if you're trying to play more faster rhythm stuff, funky stuff, definitely steer more towards the thinner picks, the ones that have more give. For a lot of metal or hard rock lead lines, a lot of players will skew more towards thicker picks.
Here he comes.
Definitely explore, buy variety packs of picks, see what you like. You might experience something where you find a pick and you're like, oh my God, this is life-changing. It's the best pick ever. I can't see myself using any other pick. And I had that experience a bunch of times before outgrowing that pick eventually and moving to something else. It will probably happen to you, and that's totally okay. I like practicing with the same picks for long periods of time. So when I do switch, I usually switch for good, and then I spend a very long period of time with the next pick just to keep my picking hand sort of more used to a certain pick, to have more consistency and therefore maybe better practice efficiency. Another thing I do regarding this is I like to practice with the same guitar all the time. I own a lot of guitars, but I tend to like staying on one. But there's also something to be said about switching up the guitar, which switches up how you play, especially if you're trying to write riffs, you're trying to write songs. I personally am not doing too much of that. I'm more focused on just trying to get better. I wouldn't worry about pick material too much in the beginning. Just get variety packs and see what you like, see what you hold on to better. Everyone's sweat is different. I have really dry hands. I almost never sweat. That affects the picks I like to use. The way you hold the pick obviously also influences your choice. What strings to use? If I had used lighter strings when I first started guitar, I probably wouldn't have quit, honestly. The main reason I quit guitar the first time was because of the finger pain. I personally think you can't go wrong with 8-gauge strings. Might be a bit controversial, but I think the lighter the better, especially if you're just starting. I have experienced breaking a lot of 8-gauge strings that have been bending, but ever since I've been using the Stringjoy 8-gauge strings, the signatures, they almost never break on me, and I love them to death. I swear by them. I've been playing them for maybe 4 years now. I have big hands and thick fingers, and I think if I can play 8s, you can probably play them too. You'll be able to have way longer practice sessions, be less sore, and be less at risk for injury. Also, I like Fender scale length guitars, so 25.5 inch. If you're playing Jaguars or Mustangs, or you're playing Gibsons, PRS, anything that has a shorter scale length, the strings might feel really slinky and really loose. If you're playing metal, especially if you're going to do drop D, if you're going to tune your strings down, then maybe 8s is going to be a bit tough. Those are all things to consider if you're going to try 8s, but honestly, I have tried them on Gibson guitars and I've still loved them. When I started guitar again at 24, I was playing these 9s and 10s. It was a bit discouraging, especially playing bar chords, playing bends, trying to practice a lot. It got quite painful. Of course, you can push through the pain, but your calluses can only take so much. Sometimes you really do have to rest. As soon as I switched to 8s, it really made things so much easier and so much more pleasant. It really made me more motivated to practice because I had way less finger pain. I could practice bending for hours on end. If you play an acoustic, they can be harder to set up for lighter strings. Pick an acoustic that comes stock with lighter strings, or maybe an acoustic that someone put lighter strings on. Do I need a teacher? The short answer is no, but for most people, having a teacher will make you learn faster, make you feel stuck less, will keep you accountable and more motivated, and will expose you to more genres of music. So if you can afford a teacher, it's really, really good idea. I've even had some really great teachers who gave me Zoom lessons for $20 an hour, and they were incredible teachers. I think any lesson you can get is incredible, whether that be through your friends, like Joe Satriani taught Steve Vai in high school, or was was it, middle school?
I was so fortunate because Joe was so strict. If there wasn't so much quality in what he did, I wouldn't have that.
You know, it's funny. I always felt as a teacher, you owe it to the student to make sure they live up to their talent. I know it comes off like the teacher's being strict, but actually they're seeing it in you.
Having a teacher is just incredible. I've had about 10 different guitar teachers on and off through the years, including some, one-off lessons. It's been really great just having a few lessons here and there with different people because you really start to find what works for you. I think the most important qualities to look for in a teacher are that they care, that they hold you accountable, that they are knowledgeable in the genres of music that you're interested in, and that they're knowledgeable about both technique and music theory. Personally, I've had better experiences with teachers who have gone to music school. Some of the self-taught guys, I'd find that they had more gaps in their knowledge and they would struggle to explain some theory concepts.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Of course, you have exceptions, but I do find myself liking teachers who have had some schooling in music. I also like teachers who have had a lot of teachers themselves, so they have a wider view of music education and they're just more knowledgeable about different things. They have wider perspectives. I like a teacher who's supportive, but what really gets me going is a teacher who challenges and pushes you. A teacher who really cares about you, will hold you accountable, and want to see you do better. One of my favorite teachers even invited me to come up on stage with him at different gigs and play a few songs here and there with him. He called it sitting in on his gigs, and that was really incredible. I actually built a guitar for him and have been working on that video for a while. Trial lessons are your friend. There's been times where I had a trial lesson with someone, and through the course of the first lesson, I realized that I didn't want them as my teacher. Guitar courses. I've subscribed to a few of these. I have not found myself really spending much time on some of these courses. I think most of it is on me. Some of them are really cheap, others are really pricey. Most of the ones I've tried have been relatively cheap, and because they are relatively cheap, I find myself sort of just forgetting about them or not using them much because I don't feel like I've invested so much that I really need to make the most out of it. So I do think if you get a guitar course, it's really important to set goals and decide what you're going to do with this course early on before it just becomes another subscription that you eventually cancel after a few months of not using it, which I have done quite a few times. I think it could be really valuable to take the lay of the land, find your favorite guitar YouTubers, maybe try their courses out. Especially if you're fully self-taught, I would get subscriptions to multiple courses before you decide on just the one, and try to have a plan. Practice journals. This is something I'm really passionate about. I think it's so important, and so many guitar players would tell you the same thing. So many musicians keep practice journals. I think they're incredibly valuable. Not only that, they keep you motivated. Practice journals help you track your progress to make you feel like you're doing something every day. Just knowing that you're progressing every day and keeping you aware of how much time you're putting in. Maybe you're trying to learn more chords, or you're trying to learn some basics of jazz theory and you're not practicing your shredding as much, and you find that you're getting a little slower on the shredding. That's okay, because in the grand scheme of things, you are getting better. And as you learn more and more things on guitar and music, you can't work on everything at the same time. So the practice journal is a really good way to make sure you're revisiting and upkeeping and maintaining things that you practiced in the past. And it's also so fun to look back on and look at the progress you've made, look back at the songs that you've learned. I have a column that's about takeaways from the day. I have another column that talks about what I learned from my teacher that day or what I practiced on my own that day. I do really like things on paper, but I love having my journal on Google Sheets because I can track my total number of time practiced and put in links to videos that I found insightful, tab videos, playing videos, tutorial videos. I'm always able to look back and click on these, unless YouTube goes down, fingers crossed. It is so incredible for not only your mental health and your feelings of satisfaction, seeing the amount of hours you practice just keep going up and up, shooting for goals, but also helping you think about being more specific with what you want to practice. So many music pros will emphasize how important it is what you practice instead of how long you're practicing. I do think the journal is a really nice blend of both. Also, the great thing of having the journal is that you can tailor it however you want. I think it can be really productive to have a practice plan set in stone before you practice, and I know a lot of pros do this. I should do this more. I do tend to find myself more often writing down what I did practice and sort of coming up with a mental plan before I start practicing that day and just writing what I did practice and for how long. This sounds kind of funny, but having that practice journal has been the biggest thing for both my guitar progress and for my motivation to practice, as well as my feeling of satisfaction. More than any performance on stage, honestly, just being able to feel like I'm making progress every day, tracking that and being able to read back and look at some of the things I used to do, it's incredibly rewarding. And just so good, so good. Definitely recommend that you keep a practice journal. Keep it as simple or as complicated as you want, but just have some sort of record and it'll really do wonders for you.
Hey, that's pretty good.
How much to practice? Most musicians would tell you that 10 minutes a day, 7 days a week is infinitely better than 3 hours once a week. It's really about consistency and maintaining that muscle memory. I think the most important thing is to get as many days of practice as you can. I would say no matter how tired you are, try to get in at least 5 minutes a day. If you do a few minutes a day, twice a day, that's also really good. There's also a few studies that talk about practicing motor skills before bed. This book I talked about, Lido's Art of Practice, also mentions that some of the best musicians actually don't practice 7 hours a day. A lot of them are just practicing 2 to 3 hours a day, and they find that to be really efficient. Just do the best you can and try to be consistent. If you don't have much time to practice, I would focus on things that you really want to work on. The less time you have to practice, the less noodling you should be doing. If you're traveling somewhere, maybe bring a cheap guitar, bring a headless, or maybe a portable traveler guitar, just something to help your hands keep moving. Do I need music theory? One of the age-old questions. Well, I think it depends on what you want to do with guitar. It goes hand in hand. You don't want to just be learning theory and not playing your instrument. You don't want theory to suck out the joy of playing guitar. I would say learn as you go. I feel like music theory is more pieces of a puzzle that start to come together. As you get better, learn more music theory. You're interested in jazz, you start getting introduced to seventh chords and chord changes that are more advanced. If you want to play with other people, music theory could be really important. But if you're one of the special people who likes to use your ear and you train your ear to be really good, you could get away without any music theory and be an incredible musician. But I think for the majority of people, knowing music theory or a little bit of music theory is really helpful when playing with people. You know, when they tell you the key of a song or when they want to move the key of a song, it'll make more sense. When learning chord progressions, it will help you remember them. Also for writing songs, if that's something you're interested in, I would compare music theory to shining a flashlight in a dark cave. And as you get better, the light just gets wider and wider, but it's endless. Music theory can get super incredibly advanced, and you don't need to know everything, nor is it possible for most of us to ever know everything. I would say the most important thing is deciding what you want to do with guitar and letting that inform how you approach theory and what you learn and when. And if you have a teacher, it's a really good way to learn theory, asking them questions here and there. When you see them, you take little notes, maybe put them in your practice journal. I know I did that, and I still do that. I love asking my teachers questions about theory, and a lot of times it's kind of confusing. As you learn more about certain concepts, it'll start making more sense. That way you can build your foundation of theory knowledge. It will not come in a day, so do not stress.
You could do so.
As your ear gets better, as you get better at your instrument, that is also a really important part of learning theory. It's not just what you're reading in the books and watching on the videos. A big part of it is your own musicianship. So really just take it one day at a time. Scales. Ooh, I gotta drill my scales every day. I gotta practice my scales. I think as a guitar player, you don't necessarily have to run your scales all day long. The major scale is really important and is the makeup of most other scales. If you're trying to become a more advanced player, maybe eventually wants to play some R&B, some jazz, some neo-soul, working on triads can be really, really great. For me, more fun than running scales all the time. It's incredibly useful when playing rhythm guitar or even playing lead lines. It helps you in your improvisation. You do not have to be constantly drilling scales. You will get a lot out of practicing them, but that reward will come very slowly and you have to be patient. On guitar, the pentatonic scales, the major scale, and the triads will take you really, really far. So do not stress about learning all the scales immediately, one day at a time. Lead versus rhythm guitar. Now this is interesting because some people will even think that they're different instruments. People like to treat them as completely different beasts, which they can be, but they don't have to be. Don't get hung up on which kind of player you want to be, whether you want to be a lead guitarist or a rhythm guitarist. That comes more into play when you're deciding to play in a band setting and you got to take over parts. We tend to associate rhythm parts with maybe chugging on metal guitar.
All right, we have another one. Another original song. Yeah, we're only playing original songs tonight.
Or funk guitar. Lead guitar, more like Guns N' Roses Slash, kind of single note lines, a lot of string bending, a lot of guitar soloing. So many of the skills you learn on lead guitar translate to rhythm and vice versa. All guitar players would benefit from learning both, so just look for parts that you want to learn. And eventually you'll figure out if you're gravitating more towards one or the other. I love to play lead guitar parts, but I also love a lot of rhythm stuff. There's incredible rhythm players like Nile Rodgers, Corey Wong, James Hetfield from Metallica. I just take each part as it comes. Also, if you're trying to learn jazz eventually, there's a ton of rhythm concepts that come up in jazz, and the guitar is fundamentally a rhythm instrument. We're part of the rhythm section, so fundamentally, whether you're playing lead or you're playing rhythm, you're part of the rhythm section.
Oh my god! Wow!
So don't sweat it too much unless you're in a band, but even then you can take turns. Most great guitar players today can both play great lead and great rhythm. I want to play in bands, I want to play with people, but I just can't seem to find anyone in my circle. What do? I speak from experience because a lot of people I grew up with didn't really play music, and the people I did know that played music are working professionals that do not have the time or are not interested in jamming. So I really can speak to trying to find people to play with when you don't have any around you. First of all, I think the most important thing is just to talk about it. Tell anyone you can that you're trying to learn the guitar and that you want to get better or that you want to play with people, and eventually someone's gonna say, oh, why don't we play together? Or, oh, I also play a little bit of music too. A lot of times they might not want to play because they feel really shy or self-conscious, and that could be you too, but it's really just about bridging that, wiggling in there, getting them on board. I think it's so important to create this low pressure, nurturing environment where you can feed off one another and make mistakes and be adventurous. I've jammed with a lot of people now, and I never really studied music in school. Some I met through work/networking events, meetup events, friends of friends that I had known for years but didn't really know that they played music. I had this friend who I'd known for a few years, but I'd never really talked about guitar with him. But one day I started talking about my newfound passion for guitar, and turns out he played as a kid. So we jammed together, and that was so much fun. We talk so much about guitar now, and that never would have happened if I never brought it up. I've jammed with guys I bought guitars off of on Craigslist, or I sold them guitars. There's been former guitar teachers, friends of guitar teachers, random postings on Craigslist and on different websites. Facebook could even be a potential one. Social media groups. A lot of bars will have open mics for music or open band jams, and you can go to those and meet people, and eventually you'll meet people who want to play with you. Something that really is super helpful is talking about guitar when you meet new people. You don't have to be annoying about it, but talk about it, and if they play music, then you're in business.
What? Oh my God!
I found that to be really successful for me. It's a lot of fun when it does click, and that does happen. I've had a couple experiences meeting strangers, and we just jammed that same week because we realized we both play music, or we both want to play music. There's also schools that do adult bands, and I've been part of some of those. Post in the Discords where you're a member of some guitar course, and maybe someone in your area wants to jam. Ask your guitar teachers, ask your friends. Do I even need a guitar pick? When I tried to play guitar for the first time at 17, I decided I would never play with the pick. I was playing on acoustic. The picks felt really awkward. I had these really thick strings. It felt really clunky, but I'm really glad I actually learned how to use a guitar pick when I started guitar officially when I was 24. It really let me play so many different things. It also gave me a better way of measuring my progress through my picking speed, through my picking technique, alternate picking, economy picking, sweep picking. Of course, there's some players like Matteo, the living legend himself, who are incredible without a pick. There's classical players who don't use a pick or maybe a thumb pick, and there's incredible slide players that use their fingers. But for the majority of guitar players, I think learning how to use a pick can be very, very helpful. It's a great way to measure your progress and a really versatile way to approach the guitar because you can change up picks and see how they feel, tailor your own experience to the guitar. Every pick also sounds different, and I think that's a really cool way that guitar players can be unique. Do I need to grow my nails? The short answer is no. If you're playing fingerstyle, a lot of players do like to grow their picking hand or right hand nails, but there's an increasing number of guitar players who are talking about playing without nails, like Brandon. If you're using a pick, there's even less need to do so. Although I think a lot of players do like having a little bit on their picking hand just to help hybrid pick if they need to, or to play a little bit of fingerstyle. This is something I think you should feel out on your own. There's also a different sound when you play with your nails compared to playing with your flesh. Playing with your flesh tends to be a little warmer, a little darker, I would say. Definitely keep your fretting hand nails as short as possible. I trim them every week or 2 weeks. Some people even use nail files. If they're too long, they can accidentally mute strings. They can get in the way of you trying to finger roll across frets. Are tabs the devil? Are they good for you? Well, I think everything in moderation. Tabs can be really great when something is way past your skill ceiling and you just really want to figure out what they're doing. But there is a real danger to only looking at tabs because you're not working on your ear. If you're over reliant on tabs, you might have a weak ear, and so when you play with people, you might have a hard time figuring out what key they're playing in or figuring out what riffs they're playing. Your ear is so incredibly important in music for any instrument, and especially if you're playing improvisational stuff, whether that is blues or rock or jazz, and just sounding good as a band. That's why some people will say, don't use tabs, and tabs are the devil, and so many things about tabs that I think have a lot of truth in them, but I think can be balanced out. I think a really good way to use tabs is to try and figure out a song with your ear, really, really chipping at it. And then when you think you have most of it down, or there's certain things that you just can't figure out after a long time of working on it, then looking at the tab. That can really help consolidate and give you these new licks to work with and new riffs that you never might have figured out on your own. Tabs can be really useful and really fun. If you need a break and you just want to learn a solo or a song really fast, just to, show off or just to learn for yourself, I think it can be really fun and keep you motivated on the journey to getting better. I know a lot of great players have had these phases when they just hone in on a band and try to learn a bunch of their songs. I think that's a really cool scenario where tabs can come in handy when some of these songs are just a bit too hard to figure out, or it's just taking way too long and you're getting really discouraged. With trickier songs, it's nice to consult a few tabs because some tabs might get it wrong. You can sort of split the difference and come up with something that you think is right from maybe looking at 2 different tabs and your own guesswork. Also, maybe consulting with a teacher. I have a soft spot for tabs for sure, but as I'm playing with more people, I'm finding that I am using them a little less and trying to use my ear a little more, especially with introduction to jazz and trying to work more on that side. The most important thing is staying motivated and practicing, so if tabs are a really nice way to let steam off and keep you having fun, then go for it. But in general, it's good to make sure that not everything you're learning is through tabs, especially as you get more and more advanced. Where to find great tabs? Of course, there's a ton of sites for good tabs. I would say Ultimate Guitar and Songster are some of the best. YouTube has incredible tabs, but if I want to play with people and have printable sheet music or just have it for myself, I'll go to Songster or Ultimate Guitar, or sometimes I'll go to some YouTubers' Patreons and buy some of their sheet music. In the modern day, I think most guitar players don't really need to learn proper sheet music, but if you play more jazz, you play more professional settings, that's always a great idea. Warm-ups and technical exercises. I think the spider is one of the greatest guitar exercises. You can look that up. There's a lot of different versions of things that resemble the spider. You don't need to know all the warm-ups there are. Pick a few that you really like and go from there. You want warm-ups that'll let you work on different things. Tomo Fujita has some really great warm-ups. There's some great videos like the Frank Gambale hour workout, the John Petrucci workout. There's warm-ups for sweep picking, for alternate picking. And if you get a guitar teacher, I'm sure they'll teach you a bunch of warm-ups. It's always good to warm up before you practice. So you're less at risk of injury. And if your hands are cold, really be careful. I know some professional guitarists who have told me stories about playing outside in the cold. It's an easy way to get injured. So if your hands are really cold, it's even more important to warm them up. What electric guitar should you start on? Well, the obvious answer is whichever one you can afford, but I would say that the Squier lines are really solid. Fingerstyle bolt-on guitars are really durable. The Squier Affinities or, the classic vibes, those are really great. If you get a guitar with block saddles, those are also really comfortable against your hand. Not a make or break, but getting something with block saddles is really great. If you get any PRS SE, they pretty much all come with block saddles as far as I know. A lot of Schecters are really great and come with block saddles. Schecters are really well made, as are PRS SE. There's a lot of brands out there. There's some Chinese brands that are really well made now as well. Some with stainless steel frets, which I love. Worth exploring, but when you're just starting, PRS SE, Schecter, and Squier would probably be my top picks. Epiphones can be great, but the only reason I would avoid more so the Epiphone and the Les Paul style guitars myself would just be they're less durable. The headstocks are a bit more fragile and can break.
No! God, please, no! No!
I like to kind of throw my guitars around and, if they fall down on the ground, I don't want to have to worry about it breaking. So I personally love bolt-on guitars that are really durable and well made. That said, if you want something nice that's gonna last, I would not steer away from American-made guitars. These guitars can be super expensive, but they're so incredibly well made. A Fender Custom Shop or a Music Man, a high-end Ibanez, even some of the boutique US made stuff. If you decide you want a Sir or a Tom Anderson. Something interesting that people don't really talk about is that if you can afford an expensive guitar and you buy one as your first guitar, you're more likely to practice because you're more invested in the instrument. So if your goal is to get good at guitar, then I would say get something that you don't feel is so disposable and is sort of just this fun toy you bought.
What did you say?
I mean, I could count off hundreds of people I know who have a $100 acoustic or Squier in their living room, And I'm like, oh, you play guitar? And they always have the same reaction of, oh yeah, I bought that a few years ago. I should practice more, I totally get that because that was me. Even when I came back to guitar, I had this really crappy Squier Bullet. I had terrible frets that were kind of semi-rusted, all jutting out. I just hated playing it and it did not make me feel like practicing. I only started practicing more after I started trading, buying and selling guitars. That started because I would go to Guitar Center, buy a guitar, and then realize I wasn't really bonding with it, return it. I did that once or twice and I found some used guitars. There was a whole guitar boom, so I found myself trying out different guitars, buying and selling, and eventually I moved from my Squier Bullet to a used Music Man or a used $1,000 guitar. That actually really made me want to practice. What's funny is I think people really underestimate the feeling of, oh, I'm not good enough for this guitar is too nice for me. Because I had that experience after trading a bunch of guitars and owning, a nice guitar. And that really motivated me to practice because I was like, oh, I don't want to be seen around with a really nice guitar and not being able to play it. Just other guitar players looking at me with disdain, just like, oh, he has a nice guitar, but he's so bad. Why doesn't he practice more? All these kinds of things. And that really motivated me to practice more. Now, trust me, some Squiers are really well made. Honestly, the Squier I had just needed a proper setup and a fret polish. But I didn't know that. It's really just about getting an instrument that feels good in your hands, and there's a ton of cheaper, more affordable instruments that can give you that feeling. And though guitar retail is not looking so hot right now, I would still say to try to pick up and have the guitar you want to buy in your hands, especially if you're a newer player. You really can't understate the feeling of having that neck in your hands, feeling those fret ends, and doing some vibrato on the frets and really seeing how that feels. Low-end guitars can be really great, but they just tend to be a little less consistent. So you want to try them out. What acoustic to start on? If you want to play steel string acoustic, I personally like the Ibanez TCY. Sound-wise, they may not be the best, but they're very much like electric guitars and they're super comfortable. Maybe a shorter scale length acoustic like a GS Mini, which tend to have pretty thick strings, but shorter scale length. If you want something that's not going to hurt your fingers, love the Baby Taylor as well. I would say your first priority is comfort, minimizing pain so you can keep practicing. I would say the sound comes second, especially if you're starting on one. Amplifiers. If you're just starting out, you probably do not need a big amp unless it really does something for you and you have the space, you can make the noise, and it just makes you practice more. There's a lot of great options now that you can play at bedroom volumes, you can play late at night, and they still sound really good. There's the Roland Cube, there's the Yamaha THR, there's the Spark, the New X, the Mighty Air, Boss Katana, which you can gig with, Black Star 1 watt I like as well, the Boss Waza Air. As you get to a higher price point, trying amps at the store is a really good way to decide on an amp. If you want something loud enough to gig with, aka play it in a room maybe full of 30 to 100 people, like maybe a bar, the Boss Katana will be your cheapest option. It's great, it's durable. Otherwise, you might look towards some low-end Marshalls. The Blues Junior can be solid. Do some research, go to some stores, try them out. Guitar setups, issues, etc. It's always good to start learning on a guitar that has good fretwork, nicely set up, has decent action, the neck is fairly straight, and it just feels comfortable to play. That will keep you motivated. It's a really good idea to find a good guitar tech either at your local music store or some of the big box chain stores, maybe through Craigslist and Facebook, through a friend, through a music teacher, someone you can trust. Nowadays, the turnaround time for guitar techs can be really crazy. It can take a few weeks to get your guitar back. Having two guitars can be good because you can keep practicing when the guitar is being maintenance, or you figure out ways to work on your guitar yourself, which I actually practiced a lot of during the pandemic. I even did a little bit of tech work and actually got paid to set up a few guitars, and that was fun. I love Phil McKnight, Know Your Gear, really great guitar tech who has really great videos. Learn how to do a basic setup, that should be the priority, and maybe some fret work, polishing your frets, getting your guitar really nicely playable. The next step from there could be to learn how to solder to help fix your electronics issues. And it's all not too hard, especially if you approach it one step at a time. You can get one of these StewMac screwdriver kits that I love and a ton of guitar techs love, and cheap soldering iron. After learning some tech work, you'll be able to fix most of the things that come up. Unless your pickup dies or something crazy, but chances are most things you'll be able to work on without too much prior knowledge. If you don't want to deal with it, of course, take it to get set up. You don't have to know too much, but it's always good to know a little bit, and it saves you some time. Also, when you buy a new guitar or a used guitar, that'll really help you decide what guitar to buy and not get ripped off. Dealing with pain. No matter what anyone says, do not play through the pain. A ton of professional musicians would tell you the same thing. There's a ton of stories where they've had to play through the pain because they were on a gig and eventually they had to take a few months to recover because they really did a lot of damage to their hands. As older people picking up the guitar too, we are more prone to injury, and the number one goal should be to make sure we can stay playing guitar as long as we're, up and running. If you have carpal tunnel or really bad wrist pain, it's really worth looking into headless guitars, specifically Strandberg guitars that have a very interesting neck that are ergonomic and are great for people with carpal tunnel. There's also other options. You can get stools, you can get different tools to help you prop the guitar up so you get less wrist pain. Maybe you like how some of the punk rock or hard rock stars have their guitars really low when they're playing, but there's something to be said about having the guitar a little higher, and it's better for your wrist in most cases. It will serve you wonders to learn about proper posture when playing guitar. Taking breaks, bending can really tire your wrist out, especially if you're using heavier strings. Do not stick with the same way you've been playing. If you're constantly getting pain, change it up. See a medical professional if you have to. Mindset. These are things that will keep you motivated, make sure you're still progressing, and keep you having fun. Rome wasn't built in a day. Take your time, keep journaling. A teacher of mine told me that at Berkeley, they had a saying that it takes 2 months for something to make its way into your playing.
Wait for it. Here it comes. Almost there.
It's always good to go outside your comfort zone, pick some songs that will challenge you. Balance fun and hard work. Consistency is the best thing you can do for your playing. Imagine playing 10 minutes a day for 365 days a year. That would do incredible things for your playing. Think about what you want out of guitar and you can make a very targeted game plan. Let's say you want to pull out some Elvis for a special occasion. Go learn those chords, go learn some tabs, really master that song. You want to play jazz, you want to improv, you want to play with friends, then work on your ear, practice playing over backing tracks, learn some more theory. You want to shred? Well, you got to work on that alternate picking. You want to play Master of Puppets all down picked? Well, that's going to take a while. You want to play some funk, you want to play some Corey Wong, get that fish hand going. That's a totally different skill set. So know the songs that you like and maybe the guitar parts that you like, and you can really orient yourself towards these things and you can make progress faster. Of course, it's great to explore different genres. But if you have something calling to you that you really want to learn, that really also helps you stay motivated, makes you practice longer, and feels more rewarding, honestly. Also, don't feel like you're trapped in some hole when you decide to start practicing country or rock and roll or metal. You can always circle back and take some of the knowledge from one genre to another, and boom, you've just become a unique player with your own sound. Hello. Please let me know your ideas in the comments because I'm sure there's a lot of things I glossed over and I'd love to hear about them. Bye.